I have continued to appreciate and deepen my faith and confidence in the Buddha by reading some of the stories from the Pali Canon. I continue to do this from Winter Retreat. And the last BBC I did, I talked a little bit about one particular sutta that really increased my faith in his abilities as a teacher. He is always taught to those who show up in front of him, from kings to courtesans to merchants to common folk. But I've been always very, very curious to know how he taught specifically the Sangha. He taught in large groups. He'd gather them all around and give a teaching. But what I've been fascinated with, particularly with the Bhaddali Sutra, which I wanted to finish up today, is his one-on-one, pith instructions to particular monastics. And Bhaddali, I've got to tell you, I see the Bhaddali, Venerable Bhaddali in me. And the teaching, this puja has really brought that to mind on the importance of having a qualified teacher and to be a suitable disciple. So just as a quick overview from 2 weeks ago when I shared the first part of the sutta, the Buddha, because he had been eating only one meal before midday at one sitting, he found it beneficial to be free of illness and affliction, and he enjoyed lightness, strength, and a comfortable abiding. So wishing his Sangha to have the same benefits, he imparted this precept. Unfortunately, Venerable Bhaddali would have nothing to do with it because he wanted to eat so he could sustain his holy life over the long term. I want to be able to eat. I have too much worry, too much anxiety. So the Buddha tried to compromise, and Venerable Bhaddali still would not agree. So then farther along, he went to apologize to the Buddha for his foolishness and maybe his obstinate behavior. And the Buddha had him apologize 3 times. And each time that he did, the Buddha teaches him the disadvantages of not following instructions of his teacher and the benefits of following them. Both how his behavior impacts the way in which the community perceives him because he's not following precepts, he's doing what he wants to do, and also the greater impact on the community at large, the lay people, the men and women who support them with alms and requisites, as well as the Brahmins, the non-Buddhists who are always a little bit wanting to find something to find fault with the Buddha and his teachings. So he said you have impact on the external side as far as your behavior, but also it will impact you as far as being able to gain realizations. If you can't kind of, hold the ethical conduct piece and really trust that your teacher's giving you something that will benefit you, then you could go to any type of seclusion you want, and the chances of gaining realizations, you're going to have some obstacles because the mind is unsubdued, the mind is untamed, and it's just stubborn. So that's kind of where we left the last time. And then, of course, we wonder, well, did Venerable Bhaddali hear the Buddha when he was talking to him about the reason why it might be helpful to keep precepts? No, he didn't. What he did instead is he said, Venerable Sir, how come some bhikshus get repeatedly admonished by why others do not? So Venerable Bhaddali has a it's not fair paradigm as well. So then the Buddha goes on to answer. I mean, it's a fairly simple, straightforward question, and the Buddha just puts it out there. He says, okay, regarding a bhikshu who is a constant offender with many offenses, or even a bhikshu who is only a occasional offender who commits misdeeds, and when the Sangha wishes to admonish or advise them, what does he do? He prevaricates. I had to look that up in the dictionary. It means to be vague or evasive or tries to mislead. He leads the talk aside. He tries to change the subject. He shows disturbance, and he has a very bitter and hateful mind. And he has no intention of following the precepts. He doesn't care about whether the Sangha would be pleased with his, wishing to kind of make clear and straighten up his act, and that he doesn't really care. Whereas a bhikshu who even is a constant offender with many offenses, or an occasional one, when they're admonished, they do not prevaricate. They do not try to change the subject. They do not show any disturbance, hatred, or bitterness, and instead say, let me act so the Sangha is in harmony and that they are satisfied with my behavior. This is the cause, Bhaddali, why some bhikshus get repeatedly admonished and some don't. I know that Bhaddali wants to know the answer to this question. As you go along in the sutta, you find out that he's got some issues. Okay, so the Buddha once again gives Bhaddali the answer to his question more in a general point. He's not pointing out specifically his behavior, but saying a bhikshu, let's consider a bhikshu, not making it personal, but Bhaddali does not hear him. He's not listening, he's not getting it, because the next question is, Venerable Sir, why there used to be so few training rules and so many more bhikshus established in final knowledge, where today, now instead we have so many more training rules and not so many arhats. How come? This is the how come question. We have the it's not fair, and then we have the how come. So, and the answer to this is really quite remarkable. Okay, so that's his question. How come there's no arhats coming on board, and we have all these training rules? They're driving me crazy because I can't keep them. So the Buddha says, when beings are deteriorating and the true Dhamma is disappearing, then there are more training rules and fewer bhikshus or bhikshunis becoming established in final knowledge. The teacher does not make the training rules for disciples until certain things that are the basis for taints become manifest in the Sangha. But when they do, the teacher makes known the training rules. So the teacher, the Buddha, does not lay down training rules and precepts unless the Sangha is acting out due to these arisals of taints. So I wanted to make sure I understood what taints were. So in the same middle-length discourse of the Buddha, the Majjhima Nikaya, there's a beautiful sutta, and it's called the Subhasava Sutta, which talks very specifically about these taints. So the taints become manifest, including with fever and vexation, when one doesn't try to restrain the senses. All right, so the sensual desire is really driving a lot of the behavior. The mind is untamed. The taints that cause misuse of the four requisites. So you want to look good in your robes. You want to eat food out of arrogance, attachment, good looks, and strength. You're not doing it just to sustain your life. Taints that make you unable to endure rain, cold, a little bit of hunger, a little bit of thirst. The taints that make you reckless in your regards to where you stay. You go showing up in places where there's wild elephants and wild boars and not good company. You go hang out at it said resorts, actually, in the English translation, resorts. So the four requisites are misused. You're not caring for them to really sustain your life. You're abusing them. And then, so that's kind of how the taints are the driving force behind a lot of the bad behavior. And we know in our Pratimoksha Sutra precepts, there's a lot of precepts about food. There's a lot about shelter and who you keep company with and the medicines. So the taints become manifest when this happens. But what's very interesting is that the Buddha says they don't become manifest until the Sangha has reached the peak of greatness, the summit of worldly fame, the peak of great learning, long-standing renown. Then those things that are the basis for taints become manifest. So I thought about this because in our Pratimoksha it says the only rule that the Buddha had for 12 years was guard your speech well, purify your mind, and avoid all negativities so that the actions of your three doors are pure. Being able to do all this is the path of the great sage. This is the Vinaya of the Tathagata Shakyamuni Buddha taught to the undefiled Sangha during the first 12 years. Only after that did he have to elaborate that. That's all he had to do. And the fact that Bhaddali asks about this and has a history of in the good old days when there wasn't much training, he's been around in the Sangha for a long time with Shariputra and Ananda and Mahakassapa, and he's still asking questions, how come it's not fair? So he's struggling, at least he doesn't think he is, but he's not getting on board. And then, so I thought about, well, what would it be that you have a Sangha with these extraordinary arhats in the Buddha, and suddenly he would have to start doing these precepts. So I thought that maybe because the renown of the Buddhist Sangha drew so many people to want to ordain that some of them may have had quite mixed motivations. I mean, here they are seeing after 12, 15 years, the Buddhas and the Sangha are receiving offerings. They've got all of their four requisites: food, clothing, shelter, medicine. They have a beautiful physician. They are offered land by kings. They're highly respected. Who in their right mind wouldn't want to ordain and be able to basically get taken care of? So that's a pretty nice, maybe a mixed motivation, and maybe not so interested in keeping the precepts purely as Shariputra or Upali or Mahakassapa. So things were beginning to get a little loose because the renown spread so much that it brought not only the most sincerest monastics, aspirants, but also people that had some mixed motivations. That's my thinking. So what the Buddha is really telling, he's telling it like it is, that it was the reality of why he laid down the training rules. It is the quality of the disciple that determines how things will go. And Bhaddali's been around long enough to see how things are going. So the Buddha so far has given Bhaddali 5 teachings to show clearly that ethical conduct, keeping precepts, following the training rules is the foundation for any progress on the path and any harmony in the Sangha. And that the external behavior many times is very indicative of the state of mind. So that's kind of the context right now. And for the Buddha right now, he's really going to bring out the sword of wisdom to Venerable Bhaddali. And this is how it goes. So he's talked about the renowned, he's talked about why there are fewer arhats and more training rules. And then he says, there were few of you, Bhaddali, once again referring that in the old days there weren't many, and he was in that original enclave of great practitioners, when I taught an exposition of the Dharma through the simile of the young thoroughbred colt. Do you remember, Bhaddali? No, Venerable Sir. To what reason do you attribute that? And he gives the old famous answer, I have long been one who did not fulfill the training of the teachings dispensation. When in doubt, say, I didn't do very well. The Buddha says, that is not the only cause or the only reason, but rather by encompassing your mind with my mind, being omniscient Buddha. I have long known you thus. When I'm teaching the Dhamma, this misguided man does not heed it, does not give it attention, does not engage it with all of his mind, does not hear the Dharma with eager ears. All those years, and he has watched this monk not take to heart in any form whatsoever, which is why he's still asking about the general rules about it's not fair, because he hasn't taken the Dharma to heart. However, still, Bhaddali, I will teach you on the exposition of the Dharma through the simile of a young thoroughbred colt. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir. And what the simile, I won't get into the specifics of it, but the simile is that a very clever horse trainer obtains a fine thoroughbred colt. And over the course of its training, first he starts to get the colt to wear a bit. Note that thing in their mouth. Bucks and kicks and, I don't like this, till finally, gradually, with patience and kindness, he gets used to the bit. Next thing, he tries to put a harness on him. Same thing, a little bit harder to do. It's been never done before, so he's writhing, contorting, but through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in that action. Then the horse trainer further makes him act in keeping in step, running in a circle, prancing, galloping, charging in the kingly qualities, in the kingly heritage, and the highest speed, the highest fleetness, and then the highest gentleness. When the colt is being made to do this, he has all sorts of contortions. These are 10 things that he has taught this clever horse trainer has taught this colt. But through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in those actions. And he possesses those 10 factors of all these things that he can do as a horse, including the gentleness. He's worthy of the king, in the king's service, and is considered one of the factors of a great king. Similarly, Bhaddali, when a bhikshu possesses 10 qualities, he is also worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. So what are those 10 qualities? They are right intention of one beyond training, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right knowledge, right deliverance. When a bhikshu possesses these 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. This is what the Blessed One said, and the Venerable Bhaddali was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So maybe he got it. Maybe he finally understood the causes for liberation, the causes for arhatship. So I have found the Buddhists just hanging in there with Bhaddali. And I said, our teachers are like this. They've got to come at us from all different angles. First, they kind of generally make a statement, and if we're in the room, we know they're talking to us. But if it doesn't go that way, finally, I think our teachers have just kind of come out, bring that, that sort of wisdom and just cut to the chase. So I think our teachers follow exactly in the footsteps of the Buddhas. And unfortunately, I know for part of my training, I have followed in the footsteps of Bhaddali. So I am hoping that after all these years that may we all be able to possess the qualities of a trained and subdued mind. And not just monastics, but lay practitioners, people who really have a great respect for the Dhamma and also the respect for their teacher's advice. And so I think Bhaddali has been a wonderful example, at least for my mind, to where I need to work, and also the uncomparable love and compassion and wisdom of the Buddha.